Hey guys, I'll just do a short walkthrough of my template, and hopefully that'll give you an idea of how I balance my orchestral template, which is really important if you're trying to emulate an orchestral sound. Um, you need to think about your ensemble balances and natural instrument volumes, stuff like that. If you have like violin 1, violins 2, violas, and cello and basses, and the distance from the mic. Your horns will not sound majestic unless they're coming from 8-10 meters away from the mic. So you need to simulate all of that. And I'll just do a small walkthrough on how to achieve that sound. So here you can see um, this is my basic template. Before I start scoring, this is like an empty container. It just loads up with all these settings by default. Um, I'm using Vienna Instruments for the bulk of my orchestral sounds. So you can see I have three Vienna Ensemble 64-bit instances here launched inside Cubase in the VST rack, and here are the three instances. Inside each instance you will find all the different instruments, sections and solos loaded here. You have violins, violas. I mean, I have obviously three instances to do divisi writing and stuff like that. And so I have everything here, like flute 1 2, flute ensemble, clarinet 1 2, and then it continues in the second instance, um, oboes, and all manner of woodwind instruments. And then the third instance has um, brass. So you have your the famous epic horns, and bass trombone, trombone ensemble. So all of these come inside Cubase. You can see here the different outputs from each section comes inside Cubase over here. From here I'm sending it to my reverb channels, which is over here. So strings early reflections is a different instance, so I'll just show my reverb thing here. So this little reverb here is only for the early reflections, the first reflections that get bounced off the walls of a concert hall, in this case an imaginary one. And this is the tail, the late reflections. So I split these two in order to get complete control over my the sound of each section. From here it'll go into my what I call on the fly mixing setup here. So basically from the strings ER and LR, the combined signal will go into strings wet. The dry signal from the original track will go into strings dry, and the combined signal of dry and wet will go into strings bass. So why do I do this complicated setup? Is to have complete control. Basically, I can, if I want to suddenly just automate, you know, only the strings, like just fade them out or whatever, I can do this just by this one, just inside this channel, instead of going into different MIDI events and doing volume automation and all that stuff. This also allows for special effects. Sometimes you just want to just leave a little bit of reverb hanging. So you just either decrease the dry sound or increase the wet sound depending on the situation. So, and here you can see I also have Giga Studio. I know I have to change this, it's discontinued now, but I'm using Project Sam percussion here for my orchestral percussion, and I have the usual software, Omnisphere, Contact, everything's loaded here. And similarly, all of these come here, as outputs, and I send them to different reverbs. Now, this is very important to simulate an orchestral sound. You need to simulate you need to be aware of the orchestral setting, the layout. The violins are really up front. Then there's woodwinds, brass, and percussion. So you need to emulate that distance, panning. Make sure you also have stereo width control. I'll show here. You can see all of these sounds have been narrowed in the stereo width because they were recorded in full width. Obviously, you can see Appassionata violins here. They have a larger spread here because it's a huge section. orchestral violins smaller spread, and then chamber, which is the smallest section here in this setting, is the narrowest. So you need to think about these things, about panning, about stereo width, and your reverb settings, and how hard you're hitting your reverb with the different amount of sends. I'm also doing some mic bleed stuff. For example, the cello will also bleed into the woodwinds reverb. I mean, this is pure. This is just overdoing it, I guess. But I mean, you can see whatever works for you, you know. And so this is my basic orchestral template. And all the sounds, I mean, all the MIDI channels are already loaded. I have how many? Like I think I have 85 channels here. The entire orchestra is loaded by default. So if you just hear this. So that's epic horns, and you know, if you went for violins, you're loaded here, ready to go with sorry. And what I'm doing here is I'm controlling the I don't know if you can see um, the crossfade with the mod wheel, which is very important. You don't want to only do volume automation. You need to crossfade between the different dynamic layers that the uh, whichever sampler library you're using has given. I mean, most of them have. Like Vienna has two of them, but if you use the dynamic range slider, it will sort of improve your dynamic range and simulate the effect a little bit more. So for example, this is violins here. Let's load a sustain patch quickly, and as you can see, the velocity is all the way down, and my dynamic range slider is quite up there. It's usually on 63 by default. I like to maximize it. So what will happen is you'll see now with the dynamic range slider, it sounds like this. So you can hear it starts really softly, and just for an extreme effect, if you made it 0, it'll start like this. So even at 0 velocity, it's quite loud. Whereas if you increase this dynamic range slider, so these are just a few tricks to make your mock-up sound more realistic. And yeah, so that's my basic template.
Great. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.